My name is Muhammad Hazwan bin Hamdan. So our group will present for propagation by seeds, sexual propagation. As we know, higher plants, which is vascular plants, reproduce mainly by seeds. Seeds bear genetic variability. Genetic variability create phenotypic variation. So it is important for species adaptation whenever there is change in environmental condition. Individual plants that will adapt in the environment will increase in survivability rate and success in the production in the next generation. So what it is sexual propagation? Sexual propagation is a cross between two parent plants, either on the same or different plant. This process will create or produce similar or different seedlings genotypes. So sexual propagation mainly used for seedling propagation can be controlled genetic variability, source of woody perennial seed selection, and of course for seed germination. So this figure shows the genetic makeup of offsprings from sexual propagation. As we can see here, parent A cross with parent B. Both of the parental line basically heterozygous. So it will resulting progenies that the expected ratio is 1 to 1. Phenotype also is influenced by genetic and environmental factors. Next, the use of seedlings in propagation. There is three, which is mass propagation, rootstock for asexual propagation, and plant breeding. Mass propagation. Basically, mass propagation is production, mass production of seedlings. It is an efficient and economical method of propagation for seedlings. As long the genetic variability can be controlled and it is acceptable within acceptable limits. There is some advantages in mass propagation. Can be produced in bulk. The seedlings can be kept for the long periods. It is easy to be transported around the world, high efficient manner, and the seed. Less virus problem of the seeds as it has been screened during the seed formation. The next example of mass production plant, most of agronomic crops is grown by seeds. Example is cereals. Cereals is rice, oat, sorghum, and wheat. Forages and grasses, fiber and oil plants, most of vegetable crops, ornamental and florist crops, and also woody landscape trees.
Next, we talk about the rootstock, commonly at Pocomoranti. So seedlings are used extensively to provide the rootstock of vegetative propagate cultivars of plants, especially for grafting and budding. Properly select seed materials can produce the uniform, vigorous, virus-free seedlings plants at the lower cost than comparable vegetative methods. Next, plant breeding. Growing seedlings is the most important. That means develop new cultivars, because of variability that results from the segregation of chromosomes during sexual reproduction. So for the control of genetic variability within the seed propagate species and cultivars depends on, first, nature of the breeding systems. So whether the plant are self-pollinate, cross-pollinate, or apomictic. So let's see the differences, the natural breeding of self-pollinates and cross-pollinates. Self-pollinates occur when the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma of the same flower, while for the cross-pollination, the pollen grains are carried to stigma of another flower. Self-pollination occurs when the pollen tube grows down the style of the same flower or the different flower on the same plant and produce fertilization. Natural self-pollination results from a particular flower structure. Self-pollinates also occur in the bisexual plants that having the anther and stigma mature at the same time, while cross it mature at the different times. Self-pollinate cultivars can be maintained by seed propagation because what? Because they are largely homozygous. Most species in the nature and cultivars are naturally cross-pollinate and tend to be more or less heterozygous. These species have specific mechanisms that prevent self-pollination. So next, type of species that have specific mechanism prevent self-pollination. So first is dioici. It occurs when the male and female plant are born on separate plants. For example, date palm and ginkgo. Next, Wahida will talk about the other four types of species that have specific mechanism prevent self-pollination.
Hi everyone, my name is Nur Wahida binti Wahidin and my matrix number is 76509. So today I'm gonna present to you all my part in this slide. As you can see on the slide, there are 5 types of species that have specific mechanism prevent self-pollination. The first one already presented by Farahana, so I'm gonna continue from the second one, which is monoaceae or monoaceous, which means pistil and stamen develop in separate flowers of the same plant. Next is dichogamy, where pollen is shed at a different time than when the pistil is receptive. The fourth is gametophytic sterility, which is specific genes stop normal formation of male or female reproductive structure. Lastly is incompatibility, which is inability of pollen to grow into pistil of the same flowers or flower of the same plant, even though the pollen is itself viable. Next, I'm going to present about cross-pollination. Cross-pollination occurs when pollen grains from one plant are carried to another stigma of different plant. There are 3 ways of cross-pollination. The first is vine-pollinated flower. It is produced enormous amount of pollen grains. Pollen are small, light and smooth. Flowers are dull, nectarless, skinless and dull. As you can see on the slide, wind pollination flowers are different in structure because they do not have to attract insects to them, but do need to be exposed to the wind. Next is insect pollinated flower. It is produce small amount of pollen grain. Pollen are large, heavier and with surface appendages like hooks, barbs. Flower are bright, scented and with nectar. Stigma often small and stamen often within corolla tube. Then finally, cross-pollination by bird. Hummingbirds, spider hunter, sunbirds, honey creeper, and honey eaters are the most common pollinator bird species. Plants that make use of pollination by birds commonly have bright red, orange, or yellow flowers and very little skin.